to go? Brilliant, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Western and Southern Planning Committee on Thursday, 7th of May, 2026. I am Councillor Neil Isink, Vice Chair of this committee. I'm being assisted today by Councillor Northam. The meeting is being live streamed and is available to view on the Council's website. By attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited, and all attendees must comply with the ruling of the chair of each meeting. Members of the public must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of this meeting. Only those who have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. This is limited to the first 3 people objecting and the first 3 people supporting the application who have registered, along with town or parish council and ward member. No additional material is to be circulated to members of the committee today. We have 3 applications to determine today. The planning officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak with the Democratic and Governance Officer before the deadline to register the committee in the following order: public against, public support, applicant and agent, town, parish council and ward members. Each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes. Following on from the registered speakers, the planning officers will have the opportunity to address any salient points they wish to clarify, and committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officers before moving on to their debate. At the end of the debate, we will take a vote, and I will declare the decision of the committee. Can I remind members that when we go into councillor questions and debate, please state your name and ward for the benefit of the public watching and speak directly into the microphones so that we can all hear you. If anyone is using Teams, please ensure you are on mute and your device volume is set to 0. Before we begin, just a few final points regarding general housekeeping. We are not expecting a fire alarm during today's meeting. However, should the alarm sound, please leave the building calmly and without delay using the nearest fire exit, which is located through the main doors at the back of the chamber, exiting at the reception doors. The meeting will be formally adjourned at that point and will only resume once it is confirmed safe to do so. Moving on to today's meeting. First off, we'll start with hello from committee members. So I'm Councillor Neil Isink, Vice Chair. To my left is Councillor Northam. Can we have a roll call, please? So, members, apologies. Sorry, I'll just move on to apologies first and then we'll do a roll call. The apologies we've had today are from Councillor Matt Bell, Councillor Belinda Borden and Councillor Louis O'Leary. Committee members here today are Councillor Simon Christopher, morning Simon. Councillor Paul Kimber, morning Paul. Councillor Craig Monks, morning Craig. Councillor David Northam.
Good morning.
Good morning, David. Councillor Pete Roper. Morning, Pete. Councillor David Shortell. Morning, David. And Councillor Kate Weller. Good morning, Kate. In terms of officers involved at today's meeting, we have Anne Collins, the Development Management Area Manager, Phil Crowther, lawyer, Robert Parr, Planning Officer, James Litton-Trevors, Lead Project Officer, Susan Hetherington, Transport Development Liaison Manager, Josh Kennedy, Democratic and Governance Officer, John Miles, Democratic and Governance Officer. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest they wish to make today? No, I'm seeing no hands, so that seems fine. Item number 3, the minutes. Has everyone read the minutes from the previous meeting, and is everyone happy that they are an accurate record of that meeting? Yep, no signs of any objections. That's promising. I will sign those later. public participation. Members of the public who have requested to speak, or ward members or agents or applicants, you have the option to speak now if you wish, or wait for the application after it's presented by the planning officer. In relation to planning applications, I think we can move on to item 5. Our first planning application today is planning application WD/D/16/000-378, and that's land south of Warmwell Road Crossways, and this will be presented by Matthew Potchin-Hawkes.
Hi, good morning, councillors. Thank you, Chair. So this is a hybrid application for land south of Warmwell Road in Crossways. Hybrid means it's part outline, part full. It comprises 500 dwellings, 99 in the detailed element, 401 in the outline element. It's got a new doctor's surgery, a replacement village hall, a village green, 2.5 hectares of employment land, 22.4 hectares of sang, a car park and access and landscaping. So this is a long-standing application. It's been before the former West Dorset Planning Committee twice, most recently in 2019, where there was a resolution to approve. The determination of the application has been delayed due to Section 106 negotiations, neutrality issues, policy changes, and the need to update surveys. So we're back at Planning Committee again with updated reports due to the passage of time and the new material considerations. There's one update from late yesterday. The agent has shared a letter which I understand that councillors have received. It essentially summarises the proposals and the benefits, and they are...
Matthew, sorry, could we pause for a couple of seconds? There's a couple of people who've entered the room. I'm not sure who they are. If we could just pause for 2 seconds. Sorry, Matthew. Apologies, everyone, for that. A couple of members of the public entered the room, and I was a bit confused what was going on. Sorry to pause you, Matthew. If you'd like to carry on, please.
Thank you, Chair. And one item just to note from this letter is that it talks about the reduced speed limit on Warmwell Road, reducing from 40 to 30 miles an hour. That isn't something that's proposed directly as part of this planning application. It would be something that would need to come through a separate traffic regulation order. The letter has been published on the council's planning register for transparency. So I'm just going to go through the site and the site constraints. This is the site, land south of Warmwell Road. I'll just get my pointer here as well. There we go. South of Crossways. It's south of the road here, Warmwell Road, and west of Moreton Road. It wraps around the Hubris Business Park here, and it's to the west of the Warmwell Caravan Park, which is down here. The closest residential properties are on the north and south side of Warmwell Road, on the east side of Moreton Road, at Heathfield Park, which is a small residential development here, which is essentially kind of next to the Hubris Business Park, and to the south of the site as well. Moreton's train station is about 850 metres away to the northeast, and local facilities nearby. You've got the existing Crossways surgery around here, the youth centre, the local Premier shop, and the co-op and the school over here. And you've also got the Spitfire social club around here as well. And various residential developments have come forward in Crossways in recent years to the west of Crossways and northwest of Crossways. So this is an aerial view of the site, and the majority of the site is in arable agricultural use. There are areas of woodland here, and Crossways Crossways Village Hall is in the western parcel of the site, just here. So in terms of the kind of general constraints on the site, we're not in the Dorset National Landscape. The site is within the Poole Harbour nutrient catchment area. The landscape character is Crossways Gravel Plateau, and the site falls within a mineral safeguarding area. In the western part of the site, you've got the Hubris Business Park here, and in this corner where my cursor's hovering, you probably can't see it too well, but it's outlined in red there is a scheduled ancient monument. That's the closest heritage asset immediately adjacent to the site. There is also another scheduled ancient monument down here, which is a bulb arrow about 350 metres away, and the nearest listed building is some distance from the site up by the train station. There are two public rights-of-way which go across the site. There's Bridleway S49-1, which follows the route of the access which goes down past the village hall and curves round the site and beyond back to Morton Road. And there's also a footpath, S49-2, which goes down the side of the business park through the copse of woodland before routing south through the southern parcel of the site into the woodland beyond. The site is within 5 kilometres of both Warmwell Heath to the southwest and Wimfrith Heath to the southeast, which are designated as triple SIs, SACs and Ramsar sites. The nearest site of nature conservation interest is Skippet Heath, immediately to the southwest of the site. Parts of the site fall within areas identified as existing ecological network, and various wildlife has been recorded as being present. And large areas are also identified as being within that higher potential ecological network, which is refined through site-specific surveys that the applicant has done. Parts of the site also fall within best and most versatile agricultural land. The blue is grade 2 here on the kind of northeast, well, the east and west of the business park. And there's a medium pressure gas main as well, which goes down the Bridleway route past the village hall. In terms of flood risk, the site is in flood zone 1. It's also an area identified as susceptible to groundwater flooding, and there are pockets of medium and high surface water flooding across the site, which have come from the EA's latest flood mapping. The site is allocated. That's in the local plan under policy CRS1, which I've just got an extract on screen now. The boundary of Crossways, the development boundary of Crossways was extended at the time of the local plan allocation to include local plan adoption, to include this site. So you can see it comes out and includes part of the site. The site itself does include further land, and that land is to the south of this allocation here and around the bottom of this allocation and to the west, and that's where the SANG is proposed. I've highlighted some of the criteria in the policy here, and I'll just go through some of the kind of key criteria of this. So the site allocation is for comprehensive development, including new homes, local community facilities, and at least 3.5 hectares of employment land. Mitigation of heathland and nutrient impacts is required. Highway improvements are required. There's a need for a comprehensive master plan, which includes an appropriate mix and layout of uses, improved access and recreational use and promotion of biodiversity, good links with the footpath and cycle network, including pedestrian/cycle links to the train station. There needs to be a positive relationship with the surrounding area and local character. There's a requirement to protect existing hedgerows, trees and woodland, a requirement for SUDs, appropriate phasing, and respecting the scheduled ancient monument, which is next to the site as well. And the plan, as we know, was adopted in 2015, and as a strategic allocation in that plan, it's carved out of the SIL charging schedule, which means that the site isn't SIL liable for the what would normally be liable as the residential development, which is why we have a kind of extended Section 106 heads of terms on this one, with mitigation needing to be secured in the 106 agreement. I'm just going to go through some photos of the site, starting with Warmwell Road. photos 1 and 2 here, they show this is actually off-site, but very just northeast of the site on Dick of the Banks Road and Warmwell Road, that junction there. And photos 3 and 4 show kind of typical views as you go down Warmwell Road, and it is quite a hostile road here with severance is probably an understatement there, but it does sever the site because it's a 40-mile-an-hour road. You haven't got any footpaths on the south side. This photo 5 is the entrance to the business park, and photo 6 is the entrance down to the village hall and the bridleway, which follows the same route. These photos show the footpath from Warmwell Road. You can see you've got to cross the 40-mile-an-hour road to get onto it. Once you get onto it, you can walk south through the site, and as you do so, you can look left and you can see the existing farm buildings. You can see houses on the north side of Warmwell Road, which are generally 2-storey, and you can see some development on the east side of Moreton Road in the distance there. And the field boundaries, you've got hedges and trees around that eastern parcel of the site. And then as you go further down that footpath and you look back again, you can see the kind of northern boundary there with residential properties in the distance, farm buildings, and you can see the hedges, which form part of the character of the site. As you go further south, you go through one of the 2 copses of woodland here, where you've got the industrial estate on the right. You're aware of it more so because you can hear it when you're walking along there, but it is relatively well screened because of all those trees along that boundary. And as you go further, it opens out through this copse of woodland onto the southern parcel of the site, which is an open field, and you can see the woodland there, which is beyond the site boundary. This photo here, number 3, this is looking east from the village hall, and you can see this is the kind of the trees around the business park, and within here is the scheduled ancient monument, just in where my cursor is now. This is the existing village hall, and then to the north of the business park, you've got the Spitfire Club here. So the application, it's a hybrid application, part detailed, part outline. The outline element has all matters reserved. And just to go through each of those 2 elements, you've got the detailed element here, which is for the erection of 99 dwellings, a mix of open market and affordable. 35% would be affordable. The new doctor's surgery, the replacement village hall, the village green, car park, pedestrian and vehicle accesses, works to Warmwell Road, and change of use of land to provide a sang. The outline element is the balance of the rest of the dwellings, so 401 dwellings, again a mix of open market and affordable. It includes 2.5 hectares of employment land. It's got vehicle access, pedestrian accesses, roads, footways, cycleways, and a car park in there for the sang as well, and 2 pumping stations. The affordable housing is provided on site. It's 35%, and 35% is identified within the detailed element. And it's got a tenure split here of 50-50 between the affordable and social rented and shared ownership, low cost rented. This is the illustrative master plan. I've outlined the detailed site in red, and the rest of the site is in outline apart from the sang, which does form part of the detailed application. And yeah, I will zoom in. Yeah, I'll zoom in and show some the close-ups on here as well. But just to point out, while we're on here, this is the location of the employment land on the eastern part of the site, and then the community facilities are located here on the Warmwell Road. You've got the village green, the village hall, the doctor's surgery here. And you've got the development coming forward, as you would expect, in various phases. We know what phase 1 is. That's the detailed element. The phases of the outline is, to be refined, and there's a condition there that requires the phasing to be specified. So this is the detailed element. It's flipped 90 degrees. So you've got Warmwell Road here, And I'm just going to point out the kind of key elements of this application. You've got the formation of a new access here. The doctor's surgery is then located on the west side of that access, and the village hall is on the east side of that access with the village green beyond. You've got new footway and cycleways along the north side, along the south side of Warmwell Road here. So at the moment there isn't anything, but they would then come into the site here and provide a route along the south side of that road. Within the site you've got pedestrian access, permeability throughout the site, and that would link in with the existing footpath which would run here behind the gardens and the existing residential development here. So there'd be a link into it. Most of the roads do have dedicated, segregated pedestrian routes, but there are some areas where you've got shared surfaces as well on some of these smaller streets here, and here, a couple of which are kind of cul-de-sacs. There are 2 apartment blocks within phase 1. You've got an apartment block here and an apartment block here. They're 3-storey buildings with 6 flats in each. The rest are houses and a combination of terrace, semis and detached properties. So this is the affordable housing distribution. You might not be able to see it too clearly on here unless you've got your laptop, but there is a split of 35% across the detailed element, with half of those units being for affordable or social rented, and half being for shared ownership or low-cost ownership products. And they are pepper-potted around the site, around the entrance here, along this northern road. There's some down here, and there's some on the west side as well. And there is a kind of mix of the house types. There's various house types across the whole development, and there's some which are shared between both the market and affordable element. So the houses are tenure blind. The 2 apartment blocks are both affordable. One is for low cost rented, one's for shared ownership. That's a whole block being affordable. There's not too much getting away from that, but it's a benefit in terms of management perspective from the registered provider in having those flats together. And there's 6 units in each. And as you see in the report, we've considered the distribution within phase 1 to be appropriate. And that would be secured via the Section 106 agreement. This is the village hall. So it's a single story, but with double height spaces inside, with a glazed eastern frontage here facing onto the village green. The floor plans show that it would house new parish council offices, main hall with stage and badminton court, a second hall, and space for a playgroup as well. This is the doctor's surgery. As set out in the report, there is some flexibility on how the surgery could be delivered, and of course we're not concerned about the internal layout of this, which can be kind of chop and change post planning, but it could be potentially delivered as a traditional doctor's surgery or health hub. And there's been some discussions there with NHS Dorset, who are looking at existing provisioning, crossways, and how this might be how the site might best fulfil for future needs. And the building, yes, this one's set over 2 stories, and it includes a range of consulting and treatment rooms. The materials for the buildings would be similar. They kind of speak to each other on either sides of the road, including plain clay tile roofs, rendered and timber cladding to the walls, and aluminium windows. And the designs are fairly similar to the Spitfire Club just north of the site. The houses, as I said, they're spread across quite a lot of house types. So these are most of the house types, which I'm just going to show you. But yeah, first off, you've got the apartment blocks here, which are the 3-story buildings with the kind of lower top floor here. And then you've got the townhouses, terraced houses, and farmhouses, and mews houses with a garaging at ground floor level. There's a kind of good variation of flats, terraces, and detached properties, and they've got some local characteristic design features, including chimneys, window headers to some of the dwellings. these are some of the other dwellings, and there are some larger dwellings in this site as well. So they go from, I think you've got you've got kind of 1-bed flats, 2-bed flats, right up to 3 to 5 story houses. And what appears as quite a large building here, this is actually a way to conceal some of the garaging at ground floor level, which is below here, with living accommodation above and in this rotunda of this dovecut house type. The street scenes here, I'm just going to show a couple of sections across the detailed phase. So these are the long elevations looking north-south, looking south from Warmwell Road. And as you can see, heights are north-south here from Warmwell Road down to the site. And you can see here, this is the surgery building, and then you've got the apartment building, which is 3 stories, and then heights generally kind of step down slightly. But there's really kind of limited variation in height because it's mostly 2 stories across the whole development. And then looking south here along, this is the frontage of the site here, and you've got the apartment building there, which is 3 stories, and you've got the 2-story Muse properties here with living space above the garaging space, and you've got the dovecot there as well. So there is a variation in street scene along that kind of key route. In terms of materials, the external materials would complement the community buildings and be a range of materials, including brick, render and timber for the walls and facing materials, and tile and slate for the roofs. Highways, there's a series of improvements proposed for Warmwell Road, and that would help to address the severance of the 40-mile-an-hour road and improve opportunities for active travel with the existing facilities in Crossways being on the north side of the road. You've got the school, the shops, the youth facilities and the play space as well. So there's provision of a new and upgraded pedestrian crossing points across the road, including a Copenhagen-style crossing here on the central access to the site to prioritise pedestrian and cycle movements. There's a central refuge islands within the Warmwell Road. There's realignment and widening of footways to a minimum width of 2 metres to give that safe and continuous pedestrian access. There's a new 3 metre wide pedestrian and cycle route along the south side of the road. It doesn't extend all the way along Warmwell Road, but it's along this detailed element of the site. There's traffic calming measures, new road markings, and associated realignment as well. And zooming in, just picking out there, you've got the crossing points here, and that cycle route which wraps around the green space. And you've got a dedicated right-hand turn into the site because of the new traffic movements, which will be coming off this junction. So the detailed element, we don't know the exact details for the outline because all matters are reserved, but it's future-proofed in that it ties into the outline, to the future outline scheme, which is shown here illustratively on the master plan. And I just want to point out on the master plan that you've got these 2 other accesses here, one by the industrial estate, one by the existing access down to the village hall, and then in orange here you've got the 3 locally equipped areas of play, and beyond what is the outline element you've got the SANG as well. So getting into the key planning issues in the assessment, obviously we've got the report, so I'll keep this to the kind of the key pertinent points. On the principle of development, the principle is considered to be acceptable given the proposals broadly align with the site allocation. There were some discussions at the previous planning committee about the delivery of the village hall and the phasing for that, and the requirement for that to be delivered before half of the dwellings are occupied or before the existing village hall is demolished, whatever is sooner, is proposed to be conditioned to secure the delivery of that village hall. The delivery of the doctor surgery, that isn't tied down, and the reason that isn't tied down is because in planning terms it's not considered necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, but the phasing would need to, there's a phasing condition there, and that would need to be specified at the discharge of condition stage. In terms of housing, we've got 500 homes on an allocated site across a mix of sizes with 35% affordable, which is generally good provision. To note, at the last planning committee, there was a resolution to have viability review mechanisms in the section 106. So that would mean that the developer could review viability at defined stages, 100 dwellings, 200 dwellings. Reviewing the site again, there isn't justification for those viability review mechanisms. We don't have local policy on it, so they are no longer proposed to be secured as set out in the report. And of course, on the tenure split, on our policy is for 70-30 split between the tenures, whereas we've got 50-50 split here. And that was previously resolved at the last plan committee, and there's a viability review exercise that went behind that. The viability conditions haven't materially improved since then, and that is, again, the tenure split that is proposed to be secured on the 106. So it is a reduction from the 70% affordable social rented that we would ordinarily require without a viability review exercise. And that's considered to be justified as set out in the report. And there's a clear need for affordable housing. Speaking with our housing enabling team, there is a need for a range of sizes for affordable, in specifically within Crossways for people with a local connection, from kind of 1 beds right up to 5 beds. So the affordable housing would meet a specific need here. In terms of the employment, the proposals provide 2.5 hectares of employment land, whereas the allocation is for 3.5. Whilst the shortfall from the target of 3.5 is disappointing, the provision would make an important contribution towards meeting local needs and providing jobs on site, and planning obligations are proposed to secure that employment use. Conservation, as set out in the report, we've got the scheduled ancient monument on the west side of the site. It's where the outline element is, so we don't quite know how that is going to come forward. But just to show you here, this is where the scheduled ancient monument is. It's tucked in here within the business park, and you've got the village hall kind of up, the existing village hall up here to the northwest. The illustrated proposal will show that there will be some offsetting that could be done to better relate to the SAM and not compromise that setting. But in any event, you're going to transform what is a arable field into a suburban residential estate, which would have a harmful, less than substantial harmful effect on the heritage asset. So as you see in the report, there's a need to carry out the balancing exercise, and on this scheme there are quite weighty public benefits, not least in terms of the housing provision and the jobs provision from the employment land, which is considered to outweigh that harm. On landscape impact, the site is relatively flat. It's not in a sensitive location in landscaping terms, and the proposals are considered acceptable subject to planning conditions, including on the hard and soft landscaping details within the detailed element. The design, as set out in the report, the detailed elements are considered to be compatible with the character of the area. There are some design features in that which take account of local character, and the design of the outline element would be subject to reserve matters. In terms of trees, there aren't any significant adverse impacts on trees or hedgerows. Some tree removals are necessary, as are some hedgerows, as you can imagine, cutting through the site, and there is new planting proposed across the site, some of which will come forward as part of the reserve matters. On the highway aspects, they've been considered in detail by the council's highways team, and we've got Susan here as well to help on any questions and answers on that aspect, and also with National Highways as well, because the scheme impacts on the strategic road network. So I'll take you through where our discussions have got to and explain the Section 106 heads of terms that are presented in the report. So within the site, you've got the majority of roads which would have dedicated footways, as I've said, and there are instances of where there would be shared surfaces across the site in some of these cul-de-sacs and these two roads here. And there's planning conditions to require inclusive mobility measures there to improve the pedestrian experience. As I've noted earlier, there are quite a few improvements here proposed off-site to Warmwell Road, and they're really necessary to address this severance and improve pedestrian connectivity, linking this new community with the existing community and allowing people and children to get to the facilities on the north of the site. So the mitigation it's been an iterative process with the applicant's transport consultants and our highways team to really refine these improvements and also look at how best the scheme can integrate with other improvements as well. Initially, the applicant put forward a range of off-site works, which were contributions to create a cycle route to the train station, pedestrian improvements north of the site, bus stop improvements, and an electric bike hire scheme. The council's highways team have looked at that to see whether those suggested improvements are feasible and could be taken forward. And as fantastic as it would be, a cycle route to the train station would be, unfortunately that's not something that the highways team consider feasible at the moment. It's not something we can consider planning obligations on. Similarly, there's an e-bike hire schemes have been kind of successful and less successful across Dorset. In Weymouth it's quite successful, but here it's novel, and I don't think we've got that kind of confidence in such a scheme being delivered by this development. So again, that isn't something that highways have looked to take forward. So as alternatives, this is all about addressing the severance issue. Highways have looked at how we can improve flows of pedestrians north of the site and improve connections to the train station. And this is the junction of Dick of the Banks Road, which goes up to the school and the rec, and you've got the route down here to the school. And it's a very kind of old school hostile junction. You've got to walk along this this route here as a pedestrian, and as we know, the road is heavily trafficked by quite large vehicles. It's far from ideal. So the indicative scheme that's come forward from highways is to extend and build out this footway to allow pedestrians to navigate this corner better and cross on a narrower part of the road further up Dick of the Banks Road, which would then provide a safer route north up to the school. Conscious of parents and children going this way, particularly if they're in houses on the kind of north-east side of the site, and then that would also improve routes to the train station as well. The highways team have also identified the need for improvements between Old Farm Way and Warmwell Road. This is, you've got the co-op down here, and this is a kind of informal route at the moment, which is, obviously very well used, and it's very convenient because you can get to the other shops, you can get to the other surgery and the school going a kind of quiet route. It's something we absolutely want to be encouraging, and there is a need here to formalise that and to promote that route in a better way. Separately, National Highways, they're obviously considering impacts on the strategic road network, and this is the Maxgate junction on the A35, and I've tried to turn right here a few times and given up just because it's a nightmare. But there is an increase. There is an increase of traffic from this development, on the strategic road network in this junction from the routes into Dorchester, and the off-site improvement works here would ban the right-hand turn. They'd onto the A35, and they would allow a longer dedicated right-hand turn lane from the A35 back onto the A352, which goes to Crossways and into kind of Dorchester this way. So those improvements, they were originally meant to come forward as part of the Silver Lake scheme, but there's a Grampian condition on this that the works need to be completed before 100 units are occupied, and that is proposed by National Highways and carried through. So in summary, there's the proposals have been subject to detailed negotiations with the Highways team, who are content with the proposals subject to planning obligations and planning conditions. And in summary, we've got 467,000 Section 106 contributions here on the heads of terms for the highway improvements. You've got 175 Grand towards the Old Farm Way and Warmwell Road improvements. You've got the 275k towards the Warmwell Road, Dick of the Banks Road improvements there to allow improve those routes further north. And you've got bus stop improvements as well. I think the bus stop by the Premier just north of the site, which is the kind of closest bus stop, but that would be upgraded to have real-time passenger information to let people know when the buses are coming, because this is it's a very convenient route to get into Dorchester and beyond. And then you've got the Grampian conditions as well. So you've got the highway improvements to Warmwell Road to be delivered by the applicant, but under a Section 278 agreement. And you've got the works to the Max Gate junction on the A35 as well. As well as that, we've got planning conditions, the usual kind of conditions, as well as travel plans, inclusive mobility on those shared surfaces, and cycle parking provision. And subject to securing that mitigation and those heads of terms, the proposals are considered to be acceptable in highway terms. There wouldn't be a severe impact, and the proposals will be safe. Ecology and biodiversity. Got the kind of two key impacts here are the impacts on heathlands and the kind of mitigation on the Sang, and then you've got the nutrients and Poole Harbour, which is a kind of more recent issue. On the Sang, there is a Sang management plan that was originally submitted with the application, and it's been updated to take account of the council's heathland planning framework and feedback from our heathland mitigation officer as well as our environmental assessment team, Dorset Wildlife Trust, who the applicant has had some discussions with, who are expected to take on this space, and also with Natural England. The Sang is expected to be managed by Dorset Wildlife Trust. There is provision of the Sang directly, and there's also contributions for strategic access and management monitoring contribution to be secured in the 106, and with that, impacts on heathlands would be mitigated. As well as mitigating impacts on heathland, it does provide a good range of general open space on site for use by residents and the existing community as well. In terms of nutrient impacts on Poole Harbour, that has been something that's become of greater importance since the 2019 Planning Committee, a long time ago now. But the applicant we've taken quite a lot of time here to work up a nutrient neutrality strategy with the applicant and their consultants in consultation with the with Natural England and the council's environmental assessment team. So the strategy proposes to deliver the scheme in phases. And because wastewater treatment works are proposed to be, legislation requires that they are upgraded by 2030, there's a phasing requirement here that you only have the detailed phase delivered before 2030, with the rest of the scheme delivered post 2030. And that has been agreed with the council's environmental assessment team and Natural England, and we have a habitat regulations assessment which kind of ratifies that. And tying down that mitigation, you'd have the kind of Section 106 agreement and the planning conditions. So the Section 106 would require that the whole site is taken out of agricultural use, and that's because you've got the nutrient loading from existing agriculture on the site, and the site would be fallowed. There is a fallow management plan within the Sang management plan which would remove that nutrient loading. You've got delivery of the 22.4 hectare Sang before occupation of any dwellings. So that is a key benefit in terms of that coming forward at an early stage, and it would allow for early mitigation. And you've got the condition there on only 99 dwellings being constructed before 2030. And then, as you've seen on some other planning applications, we have conditions here on the higher level of water efficiency on the dwellings, and you've got the purchasing of in perpetuity credits as well for nitrogen loading. That would kind of depend on the phasing of the outline element and be linked to exactly how many dwellings come forward in that phase, but there would be a need to purchase credits there. And subject to that mitigation, the proposals are considered to be acceptable in terms of nutrient neutrality. Flooding and biodiversity, there are, you've got the surface water issue, risk on the site of medium and high, but that can be appropriately managed through standard surface water related conditions as informed by our lead local flood authority. On minerals, there is a parallel application for minerals extraction on the site because it's in a mineral safeguarding area. That application hasn't been determined yet, but the proposals make allowance for extraction, which would take place before construction on phase one, subject to kind of that application getting approved by the Minerals Planning Authority. On amenity, the impacts on existing and future residents have been considered in terms of noise, amenity space, and privacy. Overall, there is a good level of amenity for existing and future residents. There is some shortfall on the nationally described space standards. I think one house type is slightly below, but overall there is a good level of provision there. And I think in total on phase one, there's the affordable housing performs better in terms of space standards compared to the market housing. And we've got standard conditions there on amenity, including on a noise barrier as recommended by the noise report to be installed on the along the Hubris Business Park to protect future residents. On sports provision, the kind of direct provision on the site, you've got the 3 locally equipped areas of play, which are proposed to be secured by the 106, and you've got within the village hall, there's an illustration of a badminton court there, which is considered necessary to tie down that opportunity for indoor recreation. Sport England, they did object to the original application and they maintained their objection now. They're looking for kind of specific provision in terms of swimming pools, artificial grass pitches, and other space, which I think, as set out in the report, we've got a large sang on this site. We've got the indoor provision. You've got improvements to access north of the site, which would give links and improved access to existing facilities. We're not convinced that is necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. In terms of the allocation, in the report, you've got a table there which sets out the kind of assessment against the criteria. The proposals do align with that pretty well. There are some shortfalls there on the employment space, as I've mentioned, but overall it's a good level of compliance with the policy. And bearing in mind the lack of 5-year housing land supply, the proposals are considered acceptable and sufficiently compliant with the site allocation. So the recommendation there is to grant planning permission subject to a detailed Section 106 agreement. It's longer than you probably normally see because we haven't got sill on this site, so things that would ordinarily be captured on. And you've got the affordable housing there, 35% with a 50-50 split. You've got an education contribution there of 2.7 million, which is index links and rolled up from the previous resolution. You've got provision of the sang, the strategic payments and the delivery of that sang before occupation of phase one, together with the fallow management plan. There is also an air quality contribution, which is as set out in our guidance on that to mitigate impacts on heathlands. And then you've got the highway contributions of 467,000 to mitigate those 3 aspects of highway improvements which are considered necessary. We also have the 3 areas of locally equipped areas of play. We have the provision of the village hall and associated indoor sports provision. And we have the provision of the employment land as well within use class B. I'm talking about the old use class because this application was submitted before the use class changed and we got use class E. And then we've got conditions as well. And again, there are a lot of conditions on this one. It's because it's a hybrid application and we have to have the kind of usual ones for a detailed scheme and an outline scheme as well. I'm just going to pick the ones out that I've underlined here. Happy to kind of answer any questions on these as well. But on the phasing, that is carried forward from the discussions at the previous planning committee. It would require the village green to be provided as part of phase one and the village hall to be delivered before either half the dwellings are delivered or before the existing village hall is demolished, whichever is sooner. You've got Grampian condition 14 here on the Max Gate junction. You have conditions on the employment land, conditions 24 and 25, they would secure the minimum amount of 2.5 hectares of B-class employment space and a maximum of 13,000 square metres. And there's a maximum there because of that's what's been tested as part of this application. There's a condition here on the acoustic fence to in the interest of residential amenity of future residents, and that's informed by what the noise impact assessment says. And then you've got the village hall provision as well, providing that opportunity for indoor sports. And it's a part A and part B recommendation. So if the section 106 isn't agreed within 6 months or other extended time, then to refuse permission for the reasons set out in the report. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you, councillors.
Well, thank you, Matthew. There's a lot of detail in that one. Thank you for that report. So we have two public speakers on this application. You each have 3 minutes. So starting with the agent, who is Richard Osborne. Richard, would you like to take it away?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. My name is Richard Osborne from planning consultancy Provision, speaking on behalf of the applicant. I'm really pleased to be bringing this application to you today. As you've heard, the proposals have been very long in the making. It's also a rather unusual situation by today's standards, whereby we have a major proposal for new homes with relatively few objections from the public. This should not be understated and is a testament to the community consultation, the allocation and the quality of the proposal. There is a considerable need for new and affordable homes and associated infrastructure in this part of Dorset. The proposals will deliver 500 new homes, of which 175 will be affordable. The proposals will also deliver a new multi-purpose village hall, GP surgery, village green, allotments, play areas, employment land, and over 20 hectares of publicly accessible land for informal recreation, known as SANG. There will also be financial contributions of over £3 million towards education and local infrastructure projects, with separate further contributions towards strategic highway improvements near Dorchester. In addition, the speed limit along Warmwell Road will be reduced to 30 miles an hour via a traffic regulation order, which we know has long been a local objective. The site is allocated in the adopted local plan and therefore makes a valuable contribution to the council's land supply. Members have previously resolved to grant consent in 2017 and again in 2019. However, the global pandemic, nutrient neutrality issues have all caused significant delays in completing the legal agreement. Since 2024, the applicant has prepared updated information at the council's request, including updated ecological reports, flood risk assessment, and highways input, and has engaged with statutory consultees. We have listened, and we've had really constructive dialogue with the case officer and consultees throughout the process, for which we are grateful, to the extent that there are now no outstanding objections from key consultees. The collaborative approach between applicant and officers has worked very well and resulted in a scheme that will deliver significant local benefits. Importantly, the scheme accords with planning policy and will make a valuable and much needed contribution to boosting your housing land supply. Your officer's report concludes with a clear recommendation for approval, which we support. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Brilliant. Well within time as well. Apologies, I should have said beforehand as well that I was going to make you speakers aware that there was 30 seconds remaining. So we've got one additional speaker, which is the ward member, Councillor Nick Ireland. Councillor Ireland, I'll obviously also make you aware when you've 30 seconds remaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking today as the local ward member on behalf of Crossways residents and supported by Crossways Parish Council. This application has a long and important planning history, and the community's position is both consistent and reasonable. Crossways is not a small village awaiting growth. Its population already stands at around 2,000 people, and Dorset Council's own projections indicate that this will rise to approximately 2,600 by 2032. Growth is happening now, not at the end of the build-out. When this site was first consulted on, the village accepted a substantial reduction in housing numbers from around 750 to 500 dwellings, explicitly in return for improved and early infrastructure. Central to that agreement were two facilities, a replacement village hall and a local medical provision. The importance of the village hall cannot be overstated. The existing hall was originally constructed during the Second World War to serve RAF Warmwell. While it has served the community well for decades, it is now in a very poor condition and wholly unsuited to modern expectations of community provision, accessibility standards, capacity, or energy efficiency. It is not capable of meeting either current needs or the demands of a significantly expanded population. Originally, the new village hall was to be delivered as part of Phase 1, and that early delivery was a fundamental reason that the development was accepted locally. Although members in 2019 chose to relax that timing of delivery to the occupation of the 250th dwelling, there is no new planning assessment in the current submission explaining why that delay remains reasonable, particularly given that this application is effectively a reset back to the original from over 10 years ago. Delaying the village hall risks leaving a growing population dependent on a facility that is already inadequate, precisely at the time when the community integration and social infrastructure are most critical. Residents are therefore clear and united in their ask. The village hall must be conditioned for delivery in Phase 1. Turning to healthcare, pressures are already being felt. National GP issues lists have grown substantially, and Crossways population already sits at a level that would typically justify enhanced primary care provision. In practice, many residents cannot obtain appointments locally and travel to Dorchester for routine GP services. There is also no pharmacy in Crossways, meaning residents must again travel. While NHS Dorset and the local practice cannot guarantee delivery of full GP surgery, they have not ruled it out and continue to engage with consultees. What is beyond dispute is this: healthcare provision cannot be delivered unless appropriate space is secured through planning. Residents are therefore not seeking an unreasonable promise today. They're asking for a clear condition within the outline element of the scheme, requiring a health hub, a flexible facility capable of accommodating GP services, allied health users, and pharmacy as the demand and commissioning allow. In summary, this development was accepted on the basis of early and meaningful infrastructure. There's no justification for pushing that infrastructure back. I therefore ask members to condition the village hall in delivery in Phase 1 and secure provision for a health hub within the overall development framework.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. That was actually two seconds to spare, and I forgot to give you the 30-second warning as well. Thank you very much. I don't know whether the planning officer wishes to answer any of the specific points made by the members of the public before we move to technical questions. Would you like to, Matthew? Yep.
Yeah, thank you both. Just a couple of points there. Just make members aware that obviously have the objection there from Sport England, which is one of the consultees on the application. And I think there are, as you see in the report, there are some kind of conflicts with policy on the there is a site allocation under provision of the employment space. So just noting that for completeness. Councillor Ireland, thank you for your comments there, and the growth of Crossways is acknowledged in you've got the emerging proposals in the local plan coming forward as well. I think on the village hall, as officers, we've considered the reasonableness and whether it's fairly and reasonably related to the development to have this provided as part of Phase 1. And I think the provision before the existing facility is demolished or before half the homes is delivered is reasonable. On the healthcare provision, as set out in the report, there is some flexibility on how that space is delivered, and NHS Dorset, they're essentially they're not quite sure how that would be, what they want to provide locally. What you've got there on the building, it's very flexible. You've got 3 GP rooms, you've got multifunctional rooms, receptions, waiting rooms, and everything else. So there is that flexibility for it to be carved up and provided in whichever way suits local providers. Whether that's in Phase 1, we need to kind of, what we've done as officers is again look at whether it's fair and reasonably related to the development to provide that in Phase 1, bearing in mind the kind of need that the development would generate, and you've got 99 homes within Phase 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. So we are now basically split off into 2 sections. So we'll take the first part of the discussion from members relating to technical questions, and then we'll move on to a debate. So technical questions, I think Councillor Monks was first. Councillor Monks.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Cray, Monks, Bedminster Ward. I'm sure some colleagues may have comments and technical questions with regards to the phasing of the village hall, so I'll leave that for others to speak of. But just a question with regards to the comments made from Councillor Ireland and some of the explanation there. With regards to the healthcare provision and how that might be part of phase 1 or even conditioned, you used some language like flexibility, and that worries me because obviously that is a grey area, but you then went on to talk about that some of those decision-making processes may fall outside of this place, i.e. the NHS and what they want to deliver. So in terms of, I guess my technical question is, if we were to look at a condition of the healthcare provision being part of phase 1 as a requirement, and perhaps members may speak with the village hall on a similar basis. Technically, is that actually possible? Because we're trying to condition something that's going to be reliant on third parties, aren't we?
Yeah. So yeah, when I mentioned flexibility, it's what goes into the building isn't defined. The NHS Dorset isn't quite sure how they want to best use the building in combination with the existing facility. So there is a range of ways that space could be delivered to meet local needs. What this application is, it's for the the physical building there, and obviously it's of quite substantial size, being 2-storey, and you've got space over there for various kind of treatment rooms, which could be delivered as a health hub. Whether you could kind of control this to be delivered in phase 1, I mean, that's for you to consider. But as officers, we've looked at whether it's fair and reasonable for this to be provided. We haven't had the NHS Dorset saying to us, we are over capacity and this must be delivered now, and this scheme is generating a need which must be met immediately. If they were, you'd probably see a different recommendation. I hope that answers the question.
Are you happy, Councillor Monks, or do you want to follow up? No follow up. Councillor Kimber, I think you were next.
Councillor Paul Kimber, Portland. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I've got just two points. 9.9 Sport England does say maintain objection on the grounds there's no sports provision being provided. Well, we have heard about the village hall, badminton being provided. And my first question is, would you give me an overall assessment of the sports facilities out there? I understand, speaking as well, there is football pitches, and you did mention the cricket pitch as well. So I just wondered, is it provided enough for? I understand it being a growing community. And are you happy for me to go into the second part? Yeah, and get these out of the way, and then we can go into the debate. Clearly, the footpaths at the moment are, in my opinion, quite dangerous, and I welcome, if you like, we talked about the upgrading of the footpaths and cycle paths, and this is to be welcomed. I wondered if you'd give us the whole length of how long that is, right down to the, from the station up right the way through to the community. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions, Paul. Matthew, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. I'll just take the simpler question first on the footpath distance. It's 850 metres from the site to Moreton Station. I think I can show you the plan. Yeah, I think you mentioned footpaths, but that route isn't a footpath itself. Okay, and if I just take us back to that slide of the footpaths. Okay, this will do. So that is the distance there, 850 meters. I think that takes us to the kind of edge of the site. Okay, and on the Sport England objection, their objection, they're asking for specific sports provision using their kind of sports calculator. So they've asked for $250,000 for sports hall provision. They've asked almost 200,000 for a swimming pool provision, contributions towards a artificial grass pitch and a bowls court as well. Indeed, there's obviously more sports than that. And whilst there is a request for the sports hall provision, we have looked at the multifunctionality of the village hall and the indoor sports provision that could provide, and also the locally equipped areas of play. They provide specific children's play, but not necessarily outdoor sports, which Sport England is looking for. And then you've got the outdoor. You also have a village green, which could provide some of that function, and the sang as well. In terms of local provision, I'm not sure about where the closest cricket pitch is, but I think the closest pool is in Dorchester. And north of the site, you've got the recreation ground near the school. You've got the skate park near the school. You've got the youth club, which is just north of the road, across Old Farm Way, and the existing doctor's surgery. So there is provision nearby, and there isn't considered to be justified a need to kind of tie down direct provision to improve those spaces because of what we've got proposed on the site, in the form of what I've mentioned there, in the village hall and the open spaces and the sang. Thank you.
Councillor Shortell, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's regarding really the looking at the development as a whole and the effect on any trees. I know, is that better? Thank you. The trees which would be lost during the development. I know the consultant has said that in fact the trees that are there at the moment are of low or medium quality. But I noted in the report that the proposal is that planting will increase the potential of the site to contribute to the local character well beyond the short term. In other words, the proposal is, of course, to actually add further trees as the development progresses. But it's rather vague, really, beyond the short term as to replacing a full complement of trees. I'm just wondering if the officer would comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we've got the detailed element where we have landscaping illustratively shown on there, and there's a condition there to tie that down. And the reason why we've got a condition to tie it down is because there's a further level of detailed design that needs to happen to coordinate things like street lighting and trees to make sure, in response to the landscape officer, that they've got sufficient space to grow and along those streets. Within phase one, there are kind of limited tree removals there. And why I've maybe been vague on the rest of it is because that's part of the outline application. And what the applicant's tree survey does is it bases the tree impacts on the illustrative proposals. So there are some hedgerows which would come out. There are part of the woodland copses where routes would be created, but the actual impacts would be subject to the kind of detailed design at that reserve matter stage. And I think, overall there is that, there's a removal of 4 grade B, kind of moderate quality trees, including 2 of the woodland groups, 1 down the bottom of that, the right of way, and another kind of on the eastern parcel of the site. And then there's a series of 10 kind of trees and hedgerows which would also need to be removed if you're just assuming that the scheme would come forward for the outline element in line with the illustrative master plan. So on the outline side of things, landscaping is a reserve matter, and we as a council would look at that, the proposals there, the specific impacts, exactly which trees would come out, and the landscaping when the details are known.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Shortell? Yep, brilliant. And Councillor Weller, I think you were next.
Thank you very much, Councillor Weller, Rodwell and Wyke. Got a lot of what I was noting has been covered, but I'm trying to keep this into technical questions and not floating onto any sort of debate. So first of all, on loss of trees, I think that we're all concerned about that at the moment, and I appreciate your answer in that, it's sort of how long is a piece of string question, really, isn't it? I think that we need to note at this stage, when we're giving this element of approval, that we're concerned about the loss of trees, that when trees are replaced, we would like a condition on them being indigenous trees that will be sustainable, because we see so often in these, this is a big development, I think is an important development, but we see so often in developments that trees are planted very cynically. They know they're not going to survive and they're not going to be a nuisance long term. So we want them to be indigenous trees that will survive, so they will be there for the future. I'm also concerned about the loss of hedgerows, because hedgerows are what provide an awful lot of nesting areas for birds, and we're losing those birds because we're losing the hedgerows. So I would like certainly a note, if not a condition as such, a note that where possible, if a hedgerow is lost, another indigenous hedgerow will be planted, possibly around the children's play areas, where they can be, so that a nod will be made to replacing hedgerows where it's possible to be. I'm quite concerned about, you said the routes would be safe routes, and then you said most of them. And my feeling, and we all know this, I'm not a cyclist. Do I look like a cyclist? I'm not a cyclist. But you cycle so far, and then suddenly there is no cycle path. And we would hope, an awful lot of those people in those houses will commute to work by train. It would be good for them to be able to walk or cycle safely the entire route to the station. So I think that we need to have that noted as such, and you may have a very good reason why it's physically not possible to create that at that point. And I'm going on. I acknowledge that this might be building regs rather than planning, but there's no mention here. This is a big site. And given our commitment to climate change and everything else, there's no mention at this point, it may be reserved matters, on air or ground source heat pumps for this development, no mention of grey water storage for some of these areas, or solar panelling. The only nod to climate change is provision of car charging units, and frankly, charging units on the side of each of these houses, this number would cost next to nothing and solve the problem without any bother at all. There's more to climate change than just electric charging points. So I'd like to know that that's being addressed in some way. And in terms of future proofing, you mentioned and it's not a planning matter, so it's a matter of a discussion with you, with your highways colleagues. You mentioned a TRO for the reduction of a 40 mile an hour to a 30 mile. And if you're putting another 500 houses there, that does need to be done, because very few people observe the 40 mile an hour limit along that road. TROs take forever. So our highways colleagues need to be thinking now, so that they may have gone through the various iterations of achieving a TRO by the time the first houses are occupied. So that's just a comment more than anything else. The others, I think, are probably more in the debate. So thank you. I think those are more comments for you, Matthew, than anything else, but you may be able to answer some of those bits within that.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think I'll come back on like the comments on trees, landscaping, and renewable energy, and then maybe Susan will come in on the routes to the station and the TRO. Yeah, I think as a starting point for landscaping, there is always a push and a preference for native trees because of the kind of biodiversity, multiple benefits that they can deliver. And I take the comment on the loss of hedgerows and the impacts on biodiversity as well. I think that because the hedgerows are likely to come out or in the outline element, that is something that would need to come in the outline scheme. But as you say, there are opportunities within that to provide new hedgerows around things like the sang, the play space, buffering between the industrial estate and the houses, which I think is shown kind of illustratively. So there are opportunities there. And I think when we consult our landscape colleagues at the reserve matters stage, they will always approach it with the hat of providing native trees, making sure that they kind of deliver those benefits. So I think to take your point, I think we're probably suggesting informative on there to encourage the applicant that when they do bring forward the reserve matters, that there is a preference for native trees and a replacement of hedgerows where lost. And I think on that point, the reason why we can't kind of tie it down in terms of BNG is this site was submitted before biodiversity net gain came in. So ordinarily we'd have the 10% gain in terms of the length, and we don't have that. So I think we'll add a informative on there with your kind of agreement. We can add that onto the recommendation. On the heat pumps and renewable energy aspects of it, yeah, you're right. It's not specified. We haven't got that on the proposals, but it's expected that to comply with building regulations, there would need to be updates to the design, which would, that could come forward through the reserve matters quite easily. But on the detailed scheme, that could result in amendments. One route is to there could be a planning condition added on there that requires those details to be provided prior to, say, commencement above damp-proof course level, and then that can all be kind of integrated maybe in a smoother way than what we often have is a amendment, non-material amendment, minor material amendment. So that's a suggestion I'll put out there for you to kind of consider and debate. But yeah, the one way to deal with that might be through a kind of pre-commencement above ground floor. Details of renewable energy, low technology shall be specified. I think you'd expect that it would kind of be relatively straightforward changes in the roofing of those buildings. So that covers the those aspects. I'll pass over to Susan just to come back on the route to the station and the TRO.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, so the continuous link, the cycleway from the development to Moreton, was actually looked at. It would require a continuous cycle route to the station, but would need a wider corridor beyond the scope of this development. So it's difficult. We can only do so much within either the highway control or the applicant's control. It potentially would mean having to acquire land, third-party land. So unfortunately, it's not within the gift of this particular proposal. But the Dorset Council, the travel implementation team have actually looked at this as well, and they concurred with the findings. But thank you for the question. And was there a secondary question for the TRO?
Councillor Weather, was there a separate question in relation to the TRO?
It was just to flag up that it takes forever, so you need to be thinking about it now if it's likely to be implemented by the first. Yeah, I know that's a cynical question, but from experience, you know, the sooner we start flagging up these things, the sooner it might get in the pipeline.
Thank you, Councillor Weather. I don't know whether you want to specifically come back on that, Susan. I think that you don't necessarily need to come back, Susan, but I'm sure the Highways Department will note your helpful comments, Councillor Weller. In relation to who's next, I think Councillor Christopher.
Yes, good morning. Councillor Simon Christopher, Dorset Councillor for the Marshwood Vale Ward. And I would like to thank the officer for his 50-minute presentation. Yet I would like to concentrate on just 4 lines on page 20, 9.41. And it's a shame that the ward member isn't here to listen to this. But in 9.41, it says National Rail raised concerns regarding the impact of the development on Moreton Station. Network Rail requested further information regarding the impact of these level crossings and cannot determine the impact that the development may have on railway safety. So clearly, as an accountant, I'm a prudent person, and where there was a request for information, could the officer provide details of what information was provided to National Rail to allay their concerns? And I've listened particularly to Councillor Weller with interest, and I am delighted that there will be more use of Moreton Station, will be absolutely brilliant. But what I would say is that there are presumably concerns about traffic in and around the station. And can you provide details of what further information was provided to National Rail? Because I should imagine the concerns would include, but not exclusively be, the backlog of traffic queuing by the level crossing both south and to the north of the railway line. Can you provide details of what information has been provided to National Rail? i.e., is there a volume of correspondence between highways and planning that we just haven't seen and that perhaps the ward member hasn't seen? The reason I go on about this is because I am the only survivor of the original West Dorset Planning Committee that first considered this back in the late part of 2017. And though there might have been what I would regard slight improvements at Moreton Station, I'm not aware of any major improvements at Morton Station, yet we keep on having major developments in the area. So I would welcome the comments of the officer. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think the so the applicant has updated the transport assessment. They had a kind of detailed transport assessment addendum, which came in, which was shared with Network Rail, who were, I think their comments were fairly short and didn't kind of go into the details of the kind of how the contribution would relate to this scheme. So we did ask them about the kind of justification for that as a planning officer. That's what we do with the highways team as well, because these contributions must be reasonably related in scale and kind to the proposal. And we didn't receive any further correspondence from Network Rail justifying that any proposal there. And indeed, we haven't received such a request on other schemes as well, which are kind of similar major schemes to the west of Crossways either.
Does that sufficiently answer your question, Councillor?
Well, I don't think that really necessarily reassures me in the matter of road safety, and I should imagine other members will reflect on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, there's one for all of us to think about. I think moving on, Councillor Northam, were you next?
Thank you. I had three questions, but Councillor Christopher's asked one of them, so that saves that. I'll move on. When you showed a plan of the development, you talked about the pedestrian experience, you talked about the improvements along Warmwell Road, and the entrance road to the new estate seems to have pavements. Could you put up the map? Because I wasn't certain that those pavements were throughout the development. So my first question is about, are the pavement provision throughout the development? And the second question relates to the overall scheme. We've got two bits coming on, the 99 detailed application and the 401 outline, but the sort of section 106 applies to the total scheme. So could you confirm that? And as a part of that, could you also explain a little bit more how the Warmwell Road improvements are going to be covered either in a condition or in a section 106? Because I didn't see it listed as a condition. So maybe three questions again. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Is this the plan that you were?
This relates to the Warmwell Road, so we can start at that one. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And the question was about the routes going all the way along Warmwell Road here.
No. So on this, my question was, how is that going to be conditioned or paid for? And then when you come into the estate, I couldn't see the pavements extending across all the streets. Could you show me that diagram again and provide me some assurance? Thank you.
Okay, I'm just trying to move this along seamlessly, and I seem to have put on subtitles. One moment. Yeah, okay, you can see behind the scenes there. So the plan, that slide I was looking for was this one here. And you've got, on the Warmwell Road improvements, you've got the Grampian conditions here. I'm not quite sure what condition it is, but I could find out, to be delivered under section 278. So that's those works to be provided before the trigger. I think that's before occupation of the development. And yes, on the section 106, that does apply to the whole development. Could you remind? Yeah.
So is when you've got section 106, you've got 3 points. Does the section 106 include points 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8?
No, the section 106 only includes 1 to 3, and then the rest are dealt with via conditions. Yeah.
So the remaining part of the question is about internals of the estate and the pavements, or not? Thank you.
Yeah, so internally within the estate, you've got those pavements here, which you can see on phase 1. There are some instances where you haven't got dedicated, segregated pedestrian routes, and you've got some shared surfaces, which you can see there on some of the roads. For the rest of the estate, we don't know at this stage exactly how that would come forward, because it's outlined with all matters reserved. But as you can see on the kind of bottom of this image here, you've got the you've just got the kind of north of the road, or the top of the road shown there, and you've got pavements kind of routing south. So they would be reviewed by the Highways Authority at the time that we've got the internal layout in there. And I think there is an expectation that yes, there would be a network of pedestrian routes through there, which would link in with the SANG as well.
On that diagram, sorry, for clarity, I think you're telling me that the main route in and around the exterior has a pavement which is shown as a narrow white band, but the routes which cut through, can I come and point? You can see here. This road, this road, this close, and this road do not have pavements.
That's right. I'll just answer on the mic just to kind of give the benefit of everyone listening. But that's right. So they are shared surfaces, the roads that you've just pointed out. And I'm just going to try and get my laser pointer on here so everyone can just see that. But there's the route here, and then you've got some this close here, which serves those 3 properties here, as well as the back of that property, and this close here, which serves those 4 units, and then this road here as well, which, again, there are kind of alternative routes for vehicles to go here, but there would be some element of sharing that route with road users.
Right. I'm sorry to persist.
Councillor, do you want to carry on, Councillor Norman?
It seems strange that there will be an estate with parking provision built into the estate and no pavements to protect the pedestrians and the children who may be in that area. I find that unsatisfactory. Has it been discussed with highways or the relevant part, and was there a discussion on this topic? Because it seems a poor provision to me. Thank you.
Yes, that has been discussed with the applicant and with highways. There's been some quite lengthy kind of negotiations on that. What we have is we have a condition there to take account of inclusive, or to improve inclusive mobility. And I think maybe Susan might want to expand on some of the provision there, but that might be build outs in those roads to make it more of a pedestrian-friendly environment, as is shown on some of these kind of build-outs on the road here, which are designed. I think the roads are designed down to kind of 20 mile an hour, but these are slower areas. And yes, it's suboptimal in that ideally there would be segregated routes.
Thank you, Councillor Northam. I think, if you're happy, we'll park that one there and then possibly pick it up with debate. I'm conscious that time's marching. Just to clarify as well, that Councillor Monks has unfortunately had to leave the chamber. He left at 11:25, so just making that note for the record. So moving on, I had just one quick question, hopefully, in relation to the construction traffic management plan. I note that there is one, but obviously this is a very large development site. Development's going to be ongoing for a long period of time, and there will be a lot of disruption to existing residents as well as new residents moving in. I just wondered if you could give a tiny bit more detail on what that traffic management plan looks like in relation to the various phases. Don't need to go into chapter and verse, but I'm just wanting to understand that existing residents and future residents will be protected and how.
So the final construction traffic management plan, that is actually conditioned there. Condition 15 says that it allows for phasing, so that you might have depending how the development comes forward, you have a construction traffic management plan submitted for phase 1. That would be reviewed by the highways team and approved before the developer starts on phase 1. And obviously that would kind of look at the specifics of how phase 1 works with routes into it and impacts on existing amenity. And then as the development progresses, there's a need to provide updated construction traffic management plans for the other phases as well, because at that point you might well have sensitivities with some of the dwellings being occupied and everything else. So there's a need for that to be refined through the process. And on the condition, that would require the usual criteria of what a construction traffic management plan requires. I won't go through all of those, but they're listed at A to L on that condition, and they'd be reviewed by highways and discharged before the phase commences.
Great, thank you. Councillor Christopher, I think you had a question.
Thank you for this indulgence, but even this week I've had an email from a resident in connection with nutrient neutrality. Would the officer wish to say anything more about nutrient mitigation and the impacts on Poole Harbour before we go to the debate?
I'm not really sure what to add on that. It's covered in fair amount of detail in the presentation and the report, and it has been a kind of major part of discussion with the applicant as it's kind of arisen over the course of determination on this one. So it's really needed kind of collaborative working with the applicant, our environmental assessment team, and discussions with Natural England as well on how we can ensure that this development is nutrient neutral and doesn't have that adverse impact on Poole Harbour. Essentially what's proposed to be secured on the conditions in the 106 has been, that's come straight out of the Habitat Regulations assessment process, which we've got signed off with Natural England. It's been produced by our environmental assessment team, and it's obviously bespoke to this development. It doesn't kind of set the approach for other schemes which also would need to demonstrate nutrient neutrality in their own right.
Councillor Christopher, are you happy with that response, or do you have a follow-up question?
No, I don't have a follow-up question, but as I have the liberty of speaking, I would suggest that we take a 5-minute break, as we have been here for an hour and a half before we actually have the debate, and we seem to have lost a ward member and at least one councillor, so I think we should have a 5-minute break before the debate.
As long as no one else has any objections, I think that's actually quite a good suggestion from Councillor Christopher, because it's a very detailed report, and we've already, as you quite rightly point out, been here a while. So if we take literally just 5 minutes, I'm conscious in time generally, but just a brief break just to collect our thoughts, and then we'll start for a debate. Oh, yeah, apologies, everyone. We're just waiting on Councillor Shortell. I've sent an officer out. We'll start as soon as we're back in our seats. Brilliant, thank you. We're back online, everyone. Hopefully that was enough of a brief comfort break. Obviously, it's a detailed report. There's a lot of information in this, so I am aware that it took a while to get through that lot. So if we move on to debate, I don't know whether which councillor wants to kick off a debate. Councillor Roper.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Pete Roper from Portland. I just want to sort of pick up on the concerns that Sport England have got about the lack of facilities, for this new area. There is an element of sort of sports provision in the application, with the provision of a sports hall and 3 play areas. But obviously these are sort of quite small scale, and they don't take into account any team sports activities. In particular, as regards sort of sport in general, there is an uptick in the participation in youth sports, and in particularly girls' sport participation as well. There's no sort of plan in this application for that type of sport activity, and there could be an allowance within the SANG perhaps for an area in which sort of sports activities can take place on the grass. Alternatively, which would be sort of probably more sort of useful to not only Warmwell but probably Crossways as well, if there was an area of a 3G sort of pitch facility, because this can be used all year round and can be used for sort of multiple sports activities as well.
Thank you, Councillor Roper. I don't know whether the planning officer wants to make any comment, but I think in relation to the discussions that have happened, an awful lot of work's gone into consulting with the developer. I don't know whether the planning officer wants to make a comment or any further comment in relation to additional facilities that it would be possible to get within conditions.
I don't know whether, Chair, it would help me just to show a Google image of Crossways to show you where the existing sports provision is within the village and kind of the scale of it.
That would be really helpful, thank you.
Warmwell Road down here, development site, and we've already talked quite a lot about walking up to Moreton Station and the crossing point at Dick of the Banks Road, but off Dick of the Banks Road here, where it says Crossways Skate Park, slightly misleading label, because this large green area is actually a number of football pitches. I think this is a small area of changing rooms. I've been there when people have been playing football and been teams using it. There's a mugger there, and there's a sort of skate park. I wouldn't say skate park for very old children, probably more sort of 5 to 12 rather than older teenagers. But there is already quite a large area of, and there's at least 2 football pitches provided in this area, the mugger and the skate park. And that's obviously within relative proximity. I mean, everywhere is within relative proximity of Crossways. It's not that big a place. So we don't believe there's actually a requirement for further sports provision within the development site itself. We wouldn't be able to condition the provision of a pitch either cricket or football within the Sang area, because that's got to be left as an alternative open natural green space for walking and informal recreation.
Thank you, Anne. I think that for me, that was actually a really helpful point in terms of seeing that. I personally feel relatively comfortable that an awful lot of work has gone into already into ensuring that provision is there. I don't know, do you want to come back with any further point, Councillor Roper, or are you?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I accept that. There is another sort of grass area for sports, but this is a large development, and I particularly sort of mentioned youth provision, and I think that with the number of sort of youngsters on the estate in the future, having to go across to what will probably be an already crowded sports field, because there are other developments taking place in that area as well, might not be the best way to actually approach it. I think that we should be looking at the development of more sports areas. They don't have to be, sort of large sort of playing fields, but I think that anything which will sort of help with the health and well-being of the sort of population as regards sports would be particularly useful.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's a helpful point, actually. I'm sure members will bear that in mind when we come to any vote in relation to possible suggestions on further conditions, and that obviously we can touch upon then. Does anyone else have any further points or wider points? Councillor Weller? We're into debate, yes.
Thank you. I've got a few comments to make. I'll pick up on sports first of all. I don't have a problem with sports provision. This may be a historic memory, but I do know that there's a cricket pavilion and pitch there, which I believe is still operational as well. And as far as I'm concerned, sports facilities have to be sustainable, and we won't know whether they're sustainable until there are an extra 500 houses there and people are demanding things. Now, that may be sort of a bit backward looking, but if you provide something that nobody uses, it falls into disrepair. It's not sustainable, and it's something of a waste. So I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. I'm very concerned about doctors' provision, and I appreciate absolutely the problems that planners have had pinning NHS down on this, but we know from experience that money was provided and space was provided for a doctor's practice in Chickrell, for example, because NHS could never pin doctors down to go into the space. The space has never been provided, and all those new houses in Chickrell are now provided for by practices in Wyke and in Weymouth, very often inadequately, not through the fault of the doctors, but simply because an extra couple of thousand people in an already overcrowded surgery is just impossible. So I'm really worried that that the facility should be built as part of it, because that's been one of the problems in Chickrell. It should be built, but that we do need to really pursue the NHS in finding doctors to then sustain the practice, because Crossways is even more remote than Chickrell is in terms of getting to an alternative provision. So that worries me quite a bit. And I know that other members will bring up the problem of our climate change initiative and everything else, so I won't steal their thunder. They'll quote all sorts of stuff that they're better able to do than I am. I am really, really concerned about shared spaces, i.e. spaces between pedestrians and cars. And the reason I say this, I'm afraid, this is a contentious statement, so I will ask you to forgive me in advance. I live in a road that is shared spaces. I have asked over the 11 years that I've lived there, I have asked for mitigation in this road and been told, but it's not possible to drive too fast in the road. If you live there, you can see how very possible it is for white van man particularly to drive too fast in that road, even though it's a cul-de-sac. And 3 years ago, yes, I think 3 years ago, an elderly lady was literally run over in a shared space outside my home. And I won't mince words, she was run over so badly that she was unrecognisable. That's how fast that van was reversing without using his cameras or his wing mirrors or anything else. I oppose shared spaces totally, but at the very least, and this is the contentious bit, I have pleaded with highways retrospectively to put up a sign saying this is a shared space, and I've been told it's not really necessary because nobody speeds there. The evidence is clear that they do, and they did, but I still can't get a sign there. I'm not asking for very much, really, but I can't get it. What will these residents be like? So if it's really not possible to put a pavement there, and it may not be, and I accept that, please, this is a plea to the developer, can you put a sign in the road saying there are pedestrians in that road? Can you put a sign by the side of the street saying there are, okay, elderly, daft old women, of which I am one of many in my road. We have to walk in the road because there isn't anywhere else for us to walk. Please, do something about that, and you'd get my eternal gratitude. So that's my point on that. I like the idea of extra houses there. I'd quite like to know what the percentage of affordable houses in that first phase would be, because we see so often, and it says in the details that they will come back and negotiate in the future, and all too often they negotiate down on those numbers because of viability. So I'd like to see a good percentage of affordable houses, shared ownership and so on there in that first phase, please. But otherwise, I don't have any problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Councillor Kimber, would you like to come in?
Yeah, Councillor Paul Kimber, Portland. Our community on Portland has just seen a film that started originally from the House of Commons called a national emergency, and I would urge all councillors to see this when this comes to your local communities, because it starts to bring the worry and the concern as to what we're doing to the environment. I will be supporting this today. However, it's at this stage that we can make these various points. Heat pumps and looking at those sort of areas are a complete must. And I think more when we start to see the momentum of what I call this the national emergency will bring about more need for looking at alternative heat pumps, solar panels, very much more on the roofs, the trees, which my colleague Councillor Weller has brought up. These are going to be absolute paramount on our communities, and here we have an opportunity with a new young community to start to highlight and bring about these new initiatives that we can say that, yes, we recognise what's happening globally, but we will bring about within this community, look at the initiatives that's needed for the future. And I believe that this is a real opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Yes, I may well add my voice to the comments that you've just made at a later date during the debate. Councillor Northam, I think you had a few points.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points to make, really. It picks up on what I said earlier and what Councillor Weller has said about shared spaces. I would like officers to advise me whether we could have a condition which says that segregated and safe route for pedestrians on roads within the estate which do not have pavements will be agreed prior at some stage. And I'm not quite sure at what stage, but that's what I'd like advice on. Because I think it's important that there is a segregated and safe route for pedestrians through those roads which are residential but don't currently have pavements. So I'd like some advice on how best to phrase that, but that's the first bit. And the second bit picks up on Councillor Kimber and others who have said, I think that building regs are the minimum that we should be looking at for energy efficiency in homes. And Dorset Council has produced an advisory paper on what can be done that's better than that. And I think, again, we should include encouragement to the developer, particularly for the outline permission aspects, to address the advice in that paper, because I think it's good advice that can improve the sustainability of the site for the future in a way that we'd expect of a modern development. So there's two parts there. Do I need to make it a formal proposal at this stage?
I'm wondering whether the officers might be able to offer a bit of clarification in relation to the point that you specifically made to them.
Thank you. The inclusive mobility point about the shared services, there is a condition on here, condition 9, which has been informed by the advice from Highways. I'll just read it out to say, I've got page 39 on my digital version. It depends whether you're looking at just this report or the whole thing. It's page 49 of your report, I think. Yeah, you're there. So that's before commencement of the detailed element of the development, the scheme demonstrating how inclusive and accessible movement for all users will be achieved within areas containing shared surface areas shall be submitted to and approved by the local planning authority. That shall be informed by the Department for Transport's document or a subsequent updated version there. And details shall include a timetable for implementation, and the approved scheme shall be implemented in full thereafter in accordance with the timetable and retained. I mean, what we've got on the plans are kind of build out areas, and I can illustratively you've got a change in surfacing materials. I mean, generally try and build in reduced speeds and safe environments through design and avoid signs where we can. So I think this condition is getting at that design approach integrated into those shared surfaces. And on the second point about addressing the sustainability SPG, I think that's something that we could add on as an informative to draw the applicant's attention to the advice set out within that document.
So I've got condition 9 up, and it mentions practice on access to pedestrian and transport infrastructure. It doesn't use the word safety within the statement, and I think using the word pedestrian safety would reassure me that it will actually be addressed by the team. Is that a possibility?
I think we can expand that condition just to say how inclusive, safe, and accessible movement for all users will be achieved. So that's just a small addition there on the first sentence to specifically pick that up.
Thank you.
Does that answer your specific questions, Councillor Northam, in relation to?
I'd like to make that a proposal at some point when you deem we're in proposal stage.
Does anyone else have any specific points in relation to the debate that they'd like to make? Councillor Christopher?
I would just like to ask the legal officer whether it would be entirely practical to have a condition that the village hall and the GP surgery is constructed before any houses are occupied. This is always a difficult point, and I take you back, and it's quite emotional, to the January meeting, and our late planning committee leader voted one way and I voted the other, because I'm a strong believer that if there is a condition, the condition should be adhered to, and developers shouldn't come back and say, but no, there's something which has changed. Is it possible that we, as a member-led planning committee, can insist on this? Could I ask that of the legal officer?
Phil, would you like to pick up on that one?
Thank you, Chair. I think there's two stages, so it's always legally possible. Well, it's possible to impose a conditional Section 106 obligation if it meets the tests for imposing them. Test for conditions, as you know, is in the MPPF, been established for a long time. The test for Section 106 obligations as a precondition of planning is a statutory test. So in very short terms, the key ones are that it's necessary, that it's reasonable, and that it's required by the development. You've heard in the officer's presentation. I'll deal with the GP surgery first. There isn't the requirement that we've got to require that the GP surgery is delivered at a specific time. It's part of the phasing condition, but it's not proposed to be secured by the Section 106 obligation. I'd hand over to case officer, if that's all right, if for more detail around that. The specific trigger for delivery of the village hall, which I think is a policy requirement, if I remember rightly, is always a difficulty. There's when is it reasonable to require that to come forward? Recall that members altered the trigger at the last time this was considered to bring forward delivery of the village hall, and the officer's advice is that what's proposed is now reasonable. I think we would probably need a discussion with the applicant to see whether an earlier delivery of the village hall had an effect on viability, if it was being delivered ahead of the housing. But it also need advice from case officer about whether there'd be a requirement for it in planning terms for it to come forward sooner. So there's a mix of, in theory, yes, but it's subject to the tests and a planning judgment about whether it's reasonable to insist that those come forward first. I think the answer on the village hall is subject to case officer advice. Answer on the GP surgery is we simply don't have the evidence at this stage to make it a requirement, let alone a requirement on day one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Phil. I think that really helps. Kate, I was just going to follow up with the officers and see whether they wanted to add anything in relation to that, because I found that very, very helpful. And I suspect that there's been quite a lot of work and time spent on this anyway in relation to the phasing. So if the officers would like to add a bit of clarity, an additional point to what Phil said, that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the GP facility is kind of oversized for what would reasonably be required on the site. You know, just looking at the floor plan on there, you've got the 3 GP rooms, and across England, each GP would serve a kind of average patient numbers of about 2,300 people, which is you know, more than what this development would provide. So requiring a facility with, you know, 3 GP rooms plus, you know, the nurse rooms, multifunction rooms, everything else, would be serving way more than is required by this development. And you know, we've taken the kind of comments from NHS Dorset on this. They haven't said that this is required before any homes are built. You know, indeed, the kind of infrastructure would need to come with the increased demand, because it needs to be directly related to this development. So that, yeah, from a kind of from an officer perspective, it's not considered to be justified or meet the kind of test for planning obligations or conditions to require that from day one for the GP surgery, or within, or you know, specify that within a phase of development. On the village hall, I mean, it's quite clearly needed before the existing facility is demolished, because it's in the site and it's needed. That land is needed for housing. So whenever it is demolished, there needs to be a new village hall in place, ready for use, so that there isn't that loss to the existing community and the kind of increased demands of the scheme are met. I think the trigger at 250 homes here, that was carried forward from the debate at the previous committee, and it's considered, you know, reasonably and fairly related to the additional needs that will be placed onto that facility by the you know, half of the homes and the population that would live in those homes on the development.
Thank you. I think that's a really helpful, certainly for me, that's a really helpful clarification. I'm very minded to agree with Councillor Christopher that it would be lovely to be able to condition this, but I think just listening from my own perspective to the work that's gone into it, I can see the challenges around it, and that makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense why we've settled on that trigger. So I think that's really helpful. Councillor Weller, did you want to come back with a point?
Yes, just very quickly. Thank you for that. You're absolutely right in terms of the doctor's surgery. There has to be a greater provision there, but not yet. With the village hall, bearing in mind what the ward councillor said, the existing hall now is way past its sell-by date, and any money that they put into making it waterproof and so on now would be money wasted. And I'm concerned about that. So whether, and I wasn't on that, I wasn't on the West Dorset Planning Committee, so I wasn't aware of the debate then. If there is some way of conditioning so that we can say, when it is built, and that could be brought forward a little bit, so at least when phase 1 is halfway through, perhaps, that's a bit sort of nebulous. I appreciate that, but it's just, if it waits until the entire facility is complete, for example, the entire development is complete, the old one will be unusable by then. And that would make a big impact on the social cohesion of not just this development, but the entire village. So I'd like to see, if you can find a way of tabling that in so that they don't have to wait too long for a new hall, I think that would be useful.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Councillor Northam, I think, to the planning officers, do you want to make any further comment? Or
I think just so we didn't have to be mindful of the viability implications there for the scheme. So that I suppose would require further discussions with the applicant to explore that if that was something that councillors required. But this is something that we have looked at on this proposal, and it's tied down for when half of the condition there is for which one it is. number 7 there is delivery before half of the dwellings are occupied, so 250th dwelling in part F of condition 7, which, appreciate that doesn't give a specific time when that comes forward, bearing in mind you've got the the nutrient neutrality constraints on this, meaning that some of the phase 1 can only be delivered before 2030.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I'd actually like to throw a bit of a spanner in the works before Councillor Northam speaks, actually. Just in relation to clarifying around some of the green issues that have been raised, and it's one of my particular bugbears, is the fact that we don't often we treat building control and building regulations as the standard that we should be building everything to, and it would be lovely to set a higher bar. And I find myself wondering in relation to the conditions around materials, whilst I realise it would have an impact on feasibility, whether as councillors we shouldn't be considering imposing some kind of condition around materials in relation to ensuring that they are of specific U values, for instance, and I just wondered if officers could provide me some further information about whether that's feasible in relation to conditioning materials based on not just look, but also insulation values.
Yeah, thank you. I think I understand the question on ensuring that the materials are sustainably sourced and have a kind of low embodied carbon on those materials to kind of make a wider contribution to tackling climate change. And we have our local plan. We have a fairly general policy on there about encouraging sustainability and use of materials. We don't have the policy basis to insist on this, so it's not something that we feel we can justify in terms of a planning condition.
Thank you. That was a really helpful clarification for me, because I do find it frustrating, but I appreciate we can only work with the tools that we're given to a certain extent. Councillor Northam, I think you wanted to make a point.
Thank you. If we've had some debate, I find on the whole the proposal is one of the largest that I've been involved in looking at, and I think the work that's gone over in the years to develop a comprehensive scheme that addresses facilities for residents is quite welcome. I'm disappointed that the 2.5 hectares for employment is all that's being offered, but I understand the arguments presented by the officer. I would like to propose that we accept the recommendation with 2 amendments to conditions. One is condition 9, where, sorry, just get my page back up again. Condition 9, which related to the inclusive spaces. And in the first sentence of condition 9, if we include inclusive, safe and accessible movement, so it's addition of one word, safe, which I think is probably to the Highways Department what they mean, but nevertheless I think it's important for us to have it in there. And the second one is if we could have an informative added which relates to the Dorset Council advice note on energy efficiency, which is a recommendation to planners, to developers to do better than the building regulations. I feel that's a little bit weak, but I think that's the best that we can do at the moment. So I'd like to propose that we accept with those 2 changes. Do I have a...
I will indeed. You were stealing my thunder a little bit. No worries, David. Yeah, thank you for that proposal, Councillor. I don't know if there's a seconder in the room that would. Councillor Weller, very quick with her hand on that. So we have a proposer and a seconder. So I'm given that I think it's a very large application, but we've had a lot of discussion and debate about this. Very happy to move to a vote because I'm not seeing any panicked looks on anyone's faces. So if we move to a vote on that proposal, everyone for? That's 7. Anyone against? No abstentions? No. So that vote is passed with those minor adjustments. Great, I think we're there on that one. As you say, that was a very large application. I'm not missing anything in my film. No, so that motion has passed, and we will agree to support the officer's recommendation with those adjustments. Moving on, I'm sure everyone will be very glad. We're moving on to that one, and I'd like to thank the planning officer for his hard work on that report, because there was a lot of work gone into that, and I'd like to thank the agent for his patience in listening to the debate and working through that. So moving on to item 6 on the agenda, which is P/FUL/2024/06334, and this is Abbotswell, Lime Road, Upline, and there are no public speakers. This report will be presented by Robert Parr. I think he's just getting into situ. There's always a bit of juggling when planning officers have to swap spaces. When you're ready, Rob, I shall leave it to you. I think you're nearly there. As Councillor Northam helpfully said, actually, this is one that came to committee 2 or 3 months ago, and it's coming back as a result of something that was outstanding when we voted on it previously. So I'll leave Rob to take over.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just set up my presentation in a second. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so as you mentioned, this is an application for retention of a shepherd's hut, and the application, this is the second time it's come before committee. Last time was on the 11th of December last year, where it was deferred for more information to be provided regarding the speed limit proposed at Lyme Regis and safe access to the site. So I'll just run through the proposal again for members. Here we have the application site, sort of highlighted in pink. It's on the northwest side of Lyme Regis. Here we have application site, obviously edged in red. Just to make members aware, the application site is in Dorset. However, the property it relates to, which is Abbotswell, is actually in Devon, and there's obviously it's the boundary line splits the property into the site in two, just to avoid any confusion. The application site sits partly within what would have been the old Axminster to Lyme Regis railway line as well, which is obviously disused. The reason it's obviously before members today is that the site includes land. Part of the site includes Dorset Council-owned land. Is it highlighted here in purple? So for context, here we have the access to the site from the B3165, the Upline Road, and we have previously there was a hedge on the left here, which members have seen, which has now been removed, and then you drop down into the actual where the shepherd's hut is located. We have some steps down from the driveway into what would have been the old disused railway line. Here we have the image of the shepherd's hut, which is in situ. Have a view from the shepherd's hut, if you like, looking down through the kind of cutting, which is now heavily wooded. Here we have the site. So you have the driveway here, the road obviously on the right, and then steps down, shepherd's hut in the cutting. There's a 1.8 metre close boarded fence at the top of the bank, which obviously provides some screening of the building. We have the images of elevations of the shepherd's hut, which is considered a fairly modest affair, and then the layout plan. Obviously, it's a one-bed structure with, it's designed for holiday accommodation. That's its intended use. So the applicant, to address some of the highway issues that were raised, has, with the permission of the agricultural officer, removed the hedge on the sort of south side there, and on the other side of the access point, they're proposing to adjust a section of the fencing to provide 1.2 metre high chain link fence, which of course would provide some visibility through. And here we have the footbridge going over the road there, which I'll show you an image of in a moment. Go through. Is that not going? Ah, there we go. Sorry. So yeah, this is a view looking northwest towards the application site, which is on the access point, which is on the left here, and this is the bridge with the footway across it, which we mentioned earlier. Here we have a view looking in the opposite direction, looking from the southeast, with the access point over here on the right. And here we have some images of from the access, with the hedge removed, which has sort of improved visibility onto the highway slightly. And there's an image looking in the direction from the access. So the site's within the defined development boundary and is proposed for tourist accommodation. So the principle is accepted. The design is considered to be acceptable, as is the amenity. It's in a very sort of set down, secluded location with good distance from neighbouring dwellings. The site is susceptible to surface water flooding. They provided a flood risk assessment. However, a condition is recommended regarding an emergency evacuation plan to be put in prior to the use of the site. It would provide a small contribution to the local economy through the tourism spending it's considered. There's not considered any environmental implications, no impact on trees or contaminated land. The actual development was carried out before the 12th of February 2024, so it's considered to be exempt from biodiversity net gain. And now that the highway speeds in Lyme have been reduced to restricted to 20 miles an hour, which came into force, I think, on the 5th, the highways officer has visited the site and reviewed the application and has no objection, considers it to be safe now, which obviously previously wasn't the case. So the application is recommended now to be granted with conditions, plans, and, as I mentioned earlier, the flood warning and response plan to be submitted within 1 month. And that's in the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Rob. Short and sweet in comparison to the last one. So I don't know whether there are any, obviously there's no public speakers, so are there any technical questions for the planning officer in relation to this application? No, everyone seems quite happy. And I don't know whether there's any interest in debate in relation to this one. I must admit, I remember this one coming the last time around. And I think, as I recall, I had a big problem with the 20 mile an hour and the fact that we didn't have the information to make up our mind. But it seems now pretty clear that we do. So I personally don't have any points for debate. I don't know whether anyone else has anything they would like to raise. Well, everyone seems relatively happy. I don't know whether anyone's got a proposal in relation to this application. Sorry, Paul, did you propose?
Paul Kimber, Portland, move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Northam, I think, just pipped you to the post, David. So we have a proposer and a seconder. I'm happy to move to the vote because I don't think anyone's got anything particular they want to add. So can we vote on this proposal to accept the officer's recommendation? All those in favour? That's 6. Those against? Nobody. Abstentions? And that's 1. So on that basis, that vote is passed. That application is supported in relation to the officer's recommendation. Thank you very much for that one. And moving on to our final item for today, which is item number 7. That's P /FUL/2026/00467. And this is in relation to opposite number 91, the Esplanade Weymouth, DT4 7RN. Again, there are no public speakers for this application, so I will move straight to the presentation, which is being presented today by James Linton-Travers. If you're ready, James, in your own time.
Good afternoon. Just bear with me a moment, just get this working. So, relatively straightforward proposal for a bandstand and decking for it to sit upon. The reason it's coming to committee is because Dorset Council own the land. In all other respects, it isn't contentious. The site is on Weymouth Esplanade, and the red circle indicates the location opposite 91, which is this building on the left. And located next to a ramp or a slipway from the Esplanade or promenade onto the beach. And there shows the location, slightly more detail. And this shows the context. Obviously, we have the terraced Regency buildings along the seafront, War Memorial, shelter, and that's the location here at the end of that ramp. And that's how it looks. This is the location here. And once again, just here. And that shows the bandstand. Obviously, a timber deck would be formed to extend the Esplanade over the beach. And that's the elevation of the bandstand. Simple, traditional looking structure with a metal roof and metal columns. And that shows it as a street scene, War Memorial, bandstand, shelter. And an artist's impression. So the main issues are these, which I'll just go through, 4 main issues. Principal is obviously located next to the beach on the Esplanade, in the heart of the seafront, near a railway station and public car parks and so on and so forth. Obviously, it's a proposal for tourism or recreational use, and obviously is supported in principle by our policies. In terms of the appearance, clearly it's in a sensitive location on the Esplanade, but it's proposed to be of traditional character, in similar character, not quite as fine as the shelter, but metal roof with some detailed columns. And indeed, there is historic precedent for structures of this type in Weymouth, which have been and gone. Looking at the photograph, I'd say it's probably very early 20th century, 1920s. And once again, yet another one up near where the theatre is, the Moleham, not the Moleham, the theatre. Again, traditional looking building, that's come and gone. In terms of heritage, there are a number of listed structures near to it, most notably the 2 shelters, which are Grade 2 listed, and the War Memorial is actually listed in its own right. And all of these orange buildings that you see here, the buildings along the Esplanade, are listed too. However, we do not consider that a structure in this location of the size and type and character that it is would be harmful to their setting. And obviously the site is in an area at flood risk, mostly from the sea. The proposal is considered to be water compatible development, and as such is acceptable in this location. However, we are proposing that some sort of measures or evacuation plan is agreed with the council should permission be granted. So, in summary, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to these conditions, list of the plans, commencement within 3 years, materials for the roof, which is proposed to be lead or zinc, metal, in other words, a colour for the columns, so that obviously it's in keeping with the railings along the Esplanade, and a flood warning plan.
Thank you, James. Brilliant. I particularly like that at the end. Slide at the end, very helpful. There are no public speakers in relation to this one, as I said. So are there any technical questions for the planning officer in relation to this application? Oh, Councillor Christopher.
Before I speak about this particular application, I do recall a very interesting case in Lyme Regis where they wanted to make the railings uniform. And we had a great battle to save the cast iron railings because people wanted them all to be aluminium, and the chair had the casting vote. So my question is will there be a removal of some railings to allow this to happen?
Actually, yes.
Here we get them.
Short. It's not working. It is working now. Yes, actually, there would be some railings removed to facilitate this. I am aware of the railings you refer to in Lyme Regis. I'm also aware of the railings on the Esplanade, and they are not really comparing like with like. The railings in Lyme Regis are quite ornate and much older. The railings along the Weymouth Esplanade are more modern. That's not to say they're not attractive, but it is accepted that some railings would need to be removed in order to build this.
My next question would be, could those railings that are removed, could it be a condition that they be repurposed elsewhere?
Do you wish to respond?
They're not listed, so they're not protected, and therefore no. The answer is no. However, I would be surprised if Weymouth Town Council didn't.
Thank you, James. Simon, does that answer your questions?
Merely to say, to ask the officer, are the railings of historical interest, and therefore consideration should be given to the fact that they should be repurposed, i.e. because to repurpose something is very much in the spirit of Dorset Council, is it not, as we try to recycle wherever we can?
James, do you want to come back? I think the answer is just generally no, the intention is not to repurpose them. Kate, did you have a point you wish to make?
Reassure Councillor Christopher that when we remove something like this, if we don't have a purpose for it...
Kate, could you speak into the microphone?
They won't be scrapped. At the very least, they will be stored. So our railings, the bollards and the railings require attention. It's very hard to they have to be made specifically these days. So they will, if not repurposed immediately, they will most definitely be stored safely for future use. They won't go onto a scrap heap Councillor Christopher, I do promise you.
Okay, can I just clarify, are you speaking based on your experience with your Weymouth Town Councillor hat on?
No. On experience as former borough and Weymouth Town Councillor, and I'm sure that Councillor Northern and I will make that point to our facilities manager.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. I think I'm pretty comfortable. I certainly appreciate the difference between the railings that were being referred to in Lyme and these railings. Are there any further technical questions that we'd like to cover off? Everyone seems quite happy. Do we wish to move to debate? Let's move to debate on this one. Does anyone have any specific points they'd like to make? I personally, I must admit, it made me smile when I saw the pictures of the old bandstand and a new bandstand. And to me, it personally seemed like a nice addition, an attractive addition to Weymouth seafront with echoes of how it used to look. So I'm certainly very minded to support this. I don't know whether anyone else has any points they would like to make in relation to the debate. No, everyone seems very happy, in which case I'll move to a vote on this one. Thank you, Phil, sorry. Getting carried away. A very minor point that I need a proposer and a seconder in relation to a vote. Does anyone wish to propose in relation to this application? Just to clarify, can we just clarify? Councillor Weller, sorry, your microphone wasn't on and it was a bit confusing who was proposing a seconding. So just to make sure that we've got it clear for the book, hang on.
Sorry, I'm very happy to propose the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Weller, and that is in line with the officer's recommendation. Yes. And is there a seconder for that? Councillor Shortell, is that a seconder? Fair enough. Councillor Northam, I think you wanted to make a point at the end.
Thank you. I do remember expressing an opinion on this in the Weymouth Town Council meeting. Therefore, I'm not sure whether I should vote or not. I'm happy to abstain.
Does our legal officer have anything to state in relation to that?
Thank you, Chair. I guess it would depend on the nature of the comment that Councillor Northam made and whether he thinks that the comment that he made may have predetermined him on this. I'm obviously going to say that if he thinks that he might have predetermined, the safest course would be not to vote, but it's a matter for Councillor Northam. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Does that clarify, Councillor Northam? Okay, I move to a vote on this application then. All those in favour of supporting the officer's recommendation? 5. Those against? That's none. And those abstaining? That's Councillor Christopher. And that's one no vote from Councillor Northam. So that recommendation is passed in line with the officer's, that application is passed in line with the officer's recommendation. Moving on swiftly to the end, item number 8, there are no urgent items. Item number 9, there is no, Councillor Weller, you wanted to make a point?
Just before you close the meeting, if I may, Chairman, we were informed earlier that Councillor Shortell will no longer be on this committee when we come back after our annual meeting. So since he was former chairman and has served on the committee since the start of Dorset Council, I would just like to extend my thanks to him for all the work that he's done for South and West Dorset that he doesn't live in over the years, and I hope that other members would join me in those thanks.
Thank you very much, Kate. I absolutely would be happy to join you, and I think all the rest of us would as well. Thank you very much for pointing that out, and I think we definitely all like to extend our thanks to Councillor Shortell for some very, very valuable input over the time. Just in relation to wrapping up the meeting, item number 9, there is no exempt business. So on that basis, I'm closing the meeting at 12:44. Thank you all very much.